Have you ever wondered why we grapple with the concept of right and wrong? The answer, my friends, lies in Genesis chapter 3. Let's journey back to the dawn of creation, to the Garden of Eden, where all was harmonious and serene. In the heart of this paradise stood a tree, not just any tree, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This tree was special, it was forbidden. Enter the serpent, the craftiest of all creatures. With his silver tongue he whispered in Eve's ear, sowing seeds of doubt and curiosity about the forbidden fruit. He questioned, he persuaded, and finally he convinced Eve that tasting the fruit would open her eyes, making her as wise as God. In the midst of peace and perfection, our story reaches a pivotal moment. The air thickens with anticipation as Eve, drawn by the serpent's words, reaches out to the forbidden fruit. And there, in a garden filled with abundance, Eve took a bite of the forbidden, forever altering the course of humanity. Acting on temptation always has consequences, doesn't it? Let's uncover what happened next. With the taste of the forbidden fruit still lingering, the world shifted for Adam and Eve. A veil lifted from their eyes, revealing their naked vulnerability. Hastily, they stitched together fig leaves, seeking to shield their newfound shame from each other and from God. Their hearts pounded with a strange fear, a sensation they had never known before. The simple, harmonious chorus of the garden was now underscored with an eerie silence. The presence of God, once a comfort, now quickened their pulse. They hid, but the garden offered no refuge from the Creator's gaze. When God's voice pierced the silence, it echoed with a heavy question, "Where are you?" Their confession was a whisper lost in the wind, a bitter admittance of their transgression. In the face of their Creator, Adam and Eve had to confront their disobedience. Now, what happens when divine laws are broken? The punishment, as we see, is severe. When the God of Genesis discovered the transgression of his divine decree, his wrath was swift and unforgiving. First he turned to the serpent, the crafty creature that had beguiled Eve into disobedience. The serpent was cursed above all animals, sentenced to a life of slithering on his belly, forever deemed the enemy of mankind. Next, God turned his ire towards Eve. She, who had been beguiled by the serpent and had tasted the forbidden fruit, was subjected to a curse of her own. From henceforth, women would endure pain and suffering in childbirth, a poignant reminder of the consequences of her disobedience. And finally, God turned to Adam. He, who had eaten the fruit offered by Eve, was not spared either. The earth from which he was formed was cursed because of him. He was condemned to a life of toil, to sweat and labor over the earth for his sustenance, all the days of his life. But the curses extended beyond their immediate effects. They were a grim inheritance passed down through the generations, a legacy of the original sin. The enmity between the serpent and mankind, the pain of childbirth for women, the hardship of labor for men. These were the burdens bestowed upon all their descendants. In their disobedience, Adam and Eve invited upon themselves and their descendants a life of struggle and hardship. Can one ever return to innocence once it's lost? Apparently not. So goes the final act of Genesis chapter 3, a moment that would forever change the course of human history. The expulsion of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. God, in his infinite wisdom and justice, could not allow them to remain in the paradise he had created. Their disobedience had shattered the harmony of Eden, and as a consequence they were driven out. The lush, verdant garden, brimming with life and devoid of suffering, was no longer their home. The gates of Eden were sealed, guarded by cherubim and a flaming sword that turned in all directions. But the expulsion was more than just a physical relocation. It was a profound transformation of the human condition. No longer would they live in the eternal bliss of Eden. Now they were subject to mortality. Every breath, every heartbeat was a precious gift and a constant reminder of their fall from grace. This act, while seemingly harsh, was also tinged with mercy. For in expelling Adam and Eve, God was protecting them from a fate worse than death. The chance of eating from the tree of life and living forever in their fallen state. And so, banished from Eden, the first man and woman stepped into a world of their own making, a world that was no longer a paradise.
Subscribe to the channel for more video, and please give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this.